William, I really wanted to talk today about, we know about you as a movie maker, but really you said often that you make movies to find a way to do the scientific exploration that you want to do.
I'm not a scientist, in full disclosure, but I did study physics in college, and there was a time when I was torn between the arts and sciences. Obviously, I went to the arts, but I always wondered about that path not taken. And when I was doing Titanic, we actually did a deep ocean exploration of the wreck for that film, and I really got the bug and wanted to do more of that. And so over the next however many years, we did 6 additional expeditions and built our own deep ocean robotics to do studies, forensic studies of these wreck sites like Bismarck and so on, and wound up working with a lot of scientists and actually enabling their research through the documentary film projects that I was making. So instead of the typical paradigm of a documentary company sort of piggybacking on a science cruise or a science expedition that was in work anyway, grant funded or whatever, we were actually bringing together film funding, setting up our expeditions, and then inviting the scientists to participate with us, and then filming their activities and doing documentaries about their process. Because I really believe that our kind of human salvation lies in finding the truth about the natural world and how it works through the scientific method. And so I guess if I'm not a scientist, I'm a science groupie, And what I wanted to do with the film was to try to make science appealing and even aspirational, especially to kids, and especially coming from working in the U.S. where we're falling farther and farther behind in science, technology, and engineering and math, and to try to kindle in kids a curiosity about the sciences, and actually to show them the model of people who are scientists as people of passion, people of great curiosity, great passion, great caring and understanding, and fully rounded people, not the geeks that in white smocks that scientists are usually portrayed as in Hollywood films. I don't think Hollywood has served science well, so that's what sort of set me down that path.
So you've been involved in some of the most advanced technology in deep ocean right now. Tell us a little bit about the latest adventures you're going at the depths of the ocean.
So little has been seen at the bottom of the ocean, and only about 2% of it has been explored and imaged, and the rest we understand only roughly with just coarse data from the bathymetry from towed sonar scans that are very high in the water column. So we don't have a good idea of what's down there, and it's been proven that you have to go down and look. For example, the marine biology community had no idea about these chemosynthesis-based hydrothermal vent communities until they just happened to go and look down in the, I believe it was in the Cayman Trough where they saw them for the first time. But they had bathymetry that showed that, okay, there's some fault zones here, and there might be some interesting geology. They went down and looked and found animals that they could not have imagined. Science actually, up until the mid-'80s, could not have imagined what they found. So you've got to go and look. And very little is known about the really, really deep trough systems, the subduction zones, like the Mariana Trench, Tonga Trench, Java Trench, Puerto Rico Trench, and so on. So we're building a vehicle right now down in Sydney, Australia, to basically explore these deep trench systems. It's a piloted vehicle, and it's a one-seater. So I'll go through the pilot training. Some of the other engineers that are working on it will also be pilots, and we'll flip a coin to see who goes first. And since I'm paying for it, it'll be a two-headed quarter as I'm going. But it's quite technically challenging to create a vehicle that can function at that depth. It's actually much easier to build hardware to go into space. It's 36,000 feet down to the Challenger Deep, and so the vehicle has to withstand the pressures. And the big technical challenge there is that how do you make something float when it's being crushed by 16,000 pounds per square inch of pressure? The types of foams that you use, even at Titanic depths and so on, don't work. They crush. So we had to develop our own deep syntactic foam that can work at full ocean depth. And so, it's been a 4-year engineering challenge, and we're over all of our big hurdles right now, and we're beginning to assemble the vehicle. We've already pressure tested the hull, and it passed with flying colors, and so, we're looking very confident for probably toward fourth quarter of 11 to be making the dives. Thanks.
So,
Haven't done it yet. Save the applause.
but you have been to the bottom, not bottom of the ocean, to the depths of the ocean,
Right.
to some level. And at some
Many
point, there
times.
is no light, and there isn't anything around you.
put it-
What does it feel when you're down there?
Well, I've spent about 3,000 hours on scuba, and you think you're going really deep on scuba when you go to, 220, 230 feet, something like that. And usually we're passing 230 feet in a deep submersible dive within the first couple of minutes. I've probably barely set the timer on the record decks by the time we've gone past 230 feet. And on a bright day at noon in the tropics where the water is gin clear, you'll lose light at about 500 feet. Completely lose it. You'll go black. It only penetrates the first 500 or so feet. Maybe it'll be an eerie blue for another couple hundred feet or so. Then you're in blackness, and you fall the rest of the way to, let's say, the Titanic, which is at 12,000 feet in complete blackness. So this is a world that reminds me personally of space travel, in the sense that you're in this black void. You're in a machine that has its own onboard closed loop life support system, and you're completely dependent on the technology and the engineering of your craft. And of course, to me, as a science fiction fan, growing up as a kid, that's just pure heaven. And the first time I made a sub dive, I knew I was going to be doing a lot more of this. And I've made about, I'd say, 72 or so, 33 dives to Titanic, a number to lots of other targets, science targets, and so on.
So, but I want to know, what does it feel when there's total darkness around you and you can't see anything? Is it more a surreal? Is it like outer body experience? What does it feel when you can't see anything at all?
Well, when you're falling through the water column, you keep your lights off to conserve power, and it's fun to just sort of press your face up to the viewport and look at all the bioluminescent animals. And you'll see things go by, and some of them you can, I'll flip on the camera and try to catch them as they go by. And sometimes the marine biologists, when I get back on the ship, can't even tell you what that was. If it hasn't showed up in one of their plankton nets, it might not even be cataloged yet. And I know that I'm seeing, sometimes definitively I'm seeing things that people have never seen before. I'm always seeing things I've never seen before.
Yeah.
So it's for me it's about the curiosity. It's about just wanting to know what's there. And you talk about the darkness. The darkness has, it's psychologically almost metaphoric in a way, because you switch on your lights and it reveals something, but only to the perimeter of your lights. And to me, that's how science works. You have to keep pushing the lights across that unknown terrain. And when you're moving across the floor of the ocean, you never know what's going to come into those lights. What new animal, what new geological formation. Yeah. And it just makes you kind of insatiably curious about what's just beyond.
Yeah. And one thing you always do is that you create a system for every movie you make on your own. It's not like you follow something. I've seen even the video conferencing technology you use right now with your animators all around the world is something you build with your hands. Where did this excitement about building with hands, where did it come from in you? Have you always been a tinkerer?
Yeah, I was making robots out of cardboard boxes when I was a kid, and so it just, I always feel like I need to build something. And I do have this sort of curse, which is that when I can imagine a machine, when I can imagine how it works or how a system works, I have to go build it. I'm not satisfied just with the thought experiment. I have to go build it and see if I was right.
And the other thing I find interesting about you is there was a time when you won the Oscar for the Titanic. I remember saying, I'm the king of the world. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh man. And when I met you
what
and
a schmuck, right?
But when I met you and spent time with you, you were like one of the most fun, not quite humble, but borderline humble person. Definitely not king of the hill person. Do you think you've changed in the last few years in any way? And
you're just seeing the real me. Now, yeah, I think so. I would hardly call myself mellow, but I'm mellower that I was, and I think the expeditions taught me something about leadership and about team building that I didn't know before, because the film industry doesn't do that very well, certainly not from the chair of director, because, the more you're sort of a tempestuous diva, the more they sort of, oh, he's definitely a director, and you get positive feedback for bad behavior, you really do, so, the expeditions don't allow that. When you're on a ship with a hand-picked team and you're at sea for months at a time, you depend, even to the extent of your life, on these other people. You treat them with respect and they treat you with respect. And I came out of that with a different sense of how leadership works, especially in small teams, especially when you're innovating and when you're on a frontier. We certainly felt that on the expedition project. When I went into Avatar, I took those lessons, and I think I applied them. Not every day, I mean, there's still the occasional temper tantrum, but 99% of the time, it was a much better experience. And that made it a better experience for me. It was more collaborative, it was more fun. And we all felt every day challenged by what we were doing, because there were no lookup tables for this thing. There was no sort of manual we could go to for, how did they do it the last time somebody made a movie where all the main characters were completely synthetic. Didn't exist. We had to figure that out. And there were times, we'd be in the middle of a production day where we'd just hit a wall. We wouldn't know what to do next. And I'd say, you guys know what to do next? Because I don't. And we'd just stop and we'd bring a table out and set it in the middle of the stage, and we'd all sit around it and we'd talk it out. I'd say, it's fine, we'll just take a little time out here, 2 or 3 hours, whatever it is. We'll talk out how to move forward, and we'd come up with a new method. And once we came up with that method, lo and behold, it worked. And we got such a charge from that, such a sense of empowerment, that as a team we were able to crack the problem. And that's why that team's still together now, even well over a year since Avatar was delivered. The team's still together, still anxious to start with the next one. And I know I'm supposed to say Avatar.
Avatar.
Okay. But it's been 5 years of calling it Avatar, so I'm sorry. You're just going to have to forgive me. And Lakshmi accuses me of strip mining her culture for my benefit to tell stories. But
I'm glad I have that on tape. One of the things about Avatar is that it's a visually stunning film, whether it is the floating mountains, or whether it's the flowers, or it's just a visually stunning film. Where does that come from? Is that something have you always been somebody who appreciated aesthetics, or is there something that developed over a period of time for you?
Well, we were talking about the engineering and the science and all that, but that's always in counterpoint for me to the art side. And that was my dilemma in college, because I was an artist. I could draw and paint, I could write, and I didn't know where all this was going. And I was able to synthesize all that into one set of tasks as a filmmaker, because it's a very technical medium, and you can make it even much more technical than just the sort of baseline filmmaking, which is still very technical with lighting and camera and so on. But I could synthesize that with the artistic process. So for me, I'm in heaven when I'm making a film, because I'm telling stories. They're visual. I get to draw. I get to paint. I get to work with very talented artists, and we work as a kind of a pool, artistic pool from which all of these visual ideas flows. And then, there's this highly technical, highly rigorous execution of those images. Probably if I'd become an artist, the painting would be that'd be the finished work. But with a film, the painting is just the start of a long process where that painting comes to life, and you get to in a 3D film, you get to go into it and experience it sort of wrapped around you. If I'd become a writer, the novel or the play would have been the end product. Now it's just the beginning of a long process.